This pretty cosmos flower is suitable for beginners, so grab your paints and let's get started. So thank you for joining me here on The Wonders of Watercolour, where this week we're going to be painting this really pretty cosmos flower. If you want to join in with our tutorials and you don't like drawing, or you feel you can't draw, or you just want to get on with the watercolour painting, don't worry, because I provide you with a free outline and reference photograph to work from, and I'll tell you later on in this video how you can have access to those, as I said, for absolutely free. This tutorial is suitable for all levels. Let me talk to you really quickly about the materials that I'm going to be using today. The paints that I'm using are from Deep Light. If you haven't got these paints, then please use the nearest colours that you have. You don't have to go out and buy all the materials that I'm using today. I want you to get used to using your own colours and incorporating them into our tutorials, but just in case you want to know the colours that I've chosen, they are as follows: Cherry Blossom, Woodcow Wheat, Ultramarine Rose, Reed Buff, Wild Berry, Ruta's Dream and Solstice Fern. As I said, they're all from Deep Light. These are handmade watercolour paints and they are rather special. I really enjoy using them, but I'll give you alternative colours as we work through this lesson so that you can join in with us with the colours that you've got. In case you're interested in purchasing the paints, I will put links to the paints and all the other materials that I'm using today in the description box underneath this video so that you can check them out for yourself, and I have got a discount code for those as well. I always swatch out my colours to whichever brand of paint that I'm using, and today, as you know, it's Deep Light. By making the colour chart like this, it makes matching up the colours really easy, and in this video on the top of your screen I explain how I do that. Just click through to that and you can check out that video a bit later on. The brushes I'm using are from my own set. These were done recently with a collaboration with Craftamo. If you want to buy these brushes, or indeed any of the materials that I'm using today, I will link them in the description box underneath this video so that you can check them out for yourself. Okay, so let's make a start on this painting. By the way, the brush sizes that I'm using are a number 8 round, a number 2 round, a number 4 pointed round, and a blender brush. Okay, so to begin with, I'm going to mix a watery mix of our first wash. So that's the first application that we're going to put on, and that's for the petals of the flower here. I'm using the lid of this little palette here to mix my colours. So to start with, we need to put our base layer into this lovely flower. So there are lots of pink tones here. Just to start with, I'm going to be using Ultramarine Rose, which is this soft pinky rose, and to that I'm going to add a tiny bit of Cherry Blossom just to tone it down a little bit, and I'm going to apply this straight onto this petal here using my number 8 round, straight onto the petal. Just going to be blending it down like this, picking up some more water so it's a nice light colour on the base of this flower. The paper that I'm using today is a rough surface. You could use, well, any paper that you want to use. This is 100% cotton and it's from Arches. I'm going to add to this a tiny little bit ultramarine. It's the same colour, just on its own. And using the tip of the brush, I'm just going to drop it in to that damp paint like this. And by dotting the paper, you'll see how that paint just naturally blurs into the wet paper that we've already applied that first layer. You could use any light pink colour that you have within your own set to do this. It doesn't have to be the same colours. So you're just letting that blur into the paper. So for the next one, I'm going to work wet in wet. We're going to skip a petal here because we don't want the paint to run into that damp petal. So just using water, taking it all over that petal, right up to the pencil line where I want to apply the paint. So with watercolour, we work from light to dark, putting our initial washes in first. That's our first layer, and on that we build up the layers as we work through. I'm going to mix a tiny bit of Ruta's Dream, which is this really unusual purpley tone, and it looks green in the palette, but we can just put a tiny bit of this, and this will make a really good base colour for that kind of grey tone that we see underneath. So just going to put this on really lightly. The reason I'm doing it wet in wet is because this is actually a granulating colour and it does look really natural once you've applied it. I'm actually going to take that over this bit as well, and probably the other section too. If you don't have this colour, you could use any grey tone that you've got. When you look at it swatched out, you'll see it's got this kind of really beautiful purpley tone. If you've got Moon Glow by Daniel Smith, that would be a really good alternative actually. You could use that. You see how it goes on green and then it will change this bluey tone. It's a really, really magical colour. It's called Ruta's Dream. It's by the lovely ladies at Deep Deep Light. But any colours that you've got, I want everybody to join in with these tutorials. You don't have to go out and buy anything special. Use what you've got in your palette. And if you are struggling with the colours that you have and you want to join in, let me know in the comments which colours that you have got and I'll help you match them up so that you can join in with us here on the Wonders of Watercolour. We are all about getting everybody painting and you don't have to buy any fancy equipment. You can just join in with us right here. Picking up this kind of muted greyish green tone and just taking it all over the other petals like this. While I'm waiting for this to dry, I'm going to mix a green tone for the stem. Now you'll notice from the photograph that the stem has a kind of purpley tone at the bottom, but we've got this nice kind of light green tone at the top. So for that, I'm going to use a little bit of Solstice Fern. You could use olive green for that perhaps. And I'm just going to use what was left on my palette. Using the same brush, I can just take this down. A little bit more green. So just while we're waiting for the colours to dry, you can put some of the colours in for this lovely stem that we've got here. So notice how I'm using that brush just to go right into the corners of the pencil line. Wet on dry. Wet on dry means that you are just applying the paint directly onto the paper and taking it all the way down. I'm going to change to my number 2 brush. I'm going to add a tiny bit of Wild Berry. This is kind of similar to maybe a Cerulean Violet or any purpley tone that you've got. And I'm just going to add this to the bottom part of the stem. And then just blend those together. So just a tiny bit of this colour, drop it in, back to the green. And just working around the leaves here. I have changed the photograph a little bit, added a little bit more green. So we've got this nice transition, and this is only our first wash, remember. I'm just going to put some water on the bud. This is a number 2 round, remember, just on there. And I'm going to take this right the way down the stem as well. So you apply the water where you want to drop that paint, and then I'm going to mix a tiny bit more Wild Berry. And while it's still damp, I'm just going to drop that in to the pencil line, and that water will now let that paint merge gently into the base. Cleaning my brush, picking up some more of the Solstice Green and dropping this in the bottom. This is Solstice Fern. You could use olive green or sap green. Take that down, straight onto the paper, cleaning my brush, and with that damp brush, merging this colour to the top because it's lighter at the top part. Just going to drop in a little bit more of that burgundy tone, and I'm going to add a bit of Ruta's Dream just to darken that green up, and then we just let that do its thing. Using that damp brush just to gently move that paint around and create that nice, natural, soft look. So this tutorial is suitable for any level. So whether you're new to watercolour painting or whether you're a little bit more advanced, you can join in with us here on the Wonders of Watercolour. Now we do have new tutorials every single Tuesday. So if watercolour painting is your thing and you're enjoying this kind of content, could I ask you please to subscribe and hit that little bell underneath? That way you'll be notified when I upload new content and you won't miss out on any tutorials. Now I have here what's called a blender brush. It's a stiffer brush with a curved point. This is really useful for lifting out or blending your paint. So I'm cleaning the brush in a puddle of water here, patting it onto the kitchen paper so that it's just damp, and using this brush I'm just going to lift out a tiny bit of that paint I applied to create a shape. And because of the curve you have full control of where you're lifting out that colour. I'm going to add a really solid colour to the leaves so that we can get that colour in. So we're going to mix a nice darker green using the Solstice Fern And I'm going to add to that a bit of the Ruta's Dream so that we've got this lovely darkish green tone. And because this is now probably dry enough, I hope, I can go over this with this brush. This brush has a fine point. I'm just going to add a tiny bit more Solstice Fern so that we've got a bit of variation there. So straight up to that pencil line and apply that paint. This is wet on dry. So same on the other side, working carefully around that stem. Make sure that it is dry, otherwise your colours will bleed into that stem, of course. So just bringing it down like that. Cleaning my brush on the little puddle of water that I've got. That way I'm not flooding the brush with water. Patting it dry, and then with that damp brush, I'm blending this colour down. And I'll repeat that process to get a nice graduated wash. That way it doesn't look like a solid colour. So you need to keep cleaning your brush, patting it, and then just blending it out. So at the start of this video, I mentioned that you can have access to the line drawing that I used to trace this down, as well as the reference photograph that you see on your screen now. You can have access to those for absolutely free. All you need to do to have access to those, there are two ways. You can watch this video right until the end, where I will put them up after I've shown you the finished painting, and all you need to do is pause the video and you can screenshot them and print them out that way. Or you can join our Facebook group. All you need to do is join up, and I'll link it in the description box underneath this video. If you join our Facebook group, you can have access to all of our tutorial references, all for free, and you can post your finished paintings and have some feedback from me, my team, and our fantastic Facebook members. So do consider doing that. So I'm just mixing up that colour again, the same colour, and applying it wet on dry. This is our first wash, don't forget. So this is just Ruta's Dream with a tiny bit of Solstice Fern. Because it's granulating, you can see that it does separate out a little bit to give that nice texture. I'm going to do the same on these, so just keep going. This is just the same mix as here. So we've got Solstice Fern. Going to vary it later on so that we have a bit of separation between these two. So if you are enjoying this video, could I ask you to give it a thumbs up and hit that like button down below? It's a way of letting YouTube know that you're enjoying what you see, and it really does help support me more than you know. I'd really appreciate it if you could hit that like button. It means that more people get to see this video. So just using Solstice Fern now. So any green colour that you have, right up against that pencil line, just using the tip just to move that paint into the little corners there. Really, really easy. I'm just adding a bit of water to that mix just to vary it a little bit. I want this to be slightly lighter. So in order to lighten watercolour, all you need to do is add a bit of water. So that's all I've done here. Same colour as that one. You can see the separation and the granulation of that paint, which makes it look really, really nice. So I'm using this kind of circular motion to push that pigment into the pencil line. And I'm going to add Solstice Fern with a lot of water to this one, just for variation. So this is pretty much our first layer, so our first wash. So with watercolour we build up our layers, making sure that each layer is dry before we apply the next so that we can build them up. So all we have to do now is be patient and let this first wash dry before we start to add our other colours. But while we're waiting for this to dry, in case you didn't already know, we do have a Patreon where every month we give you full-length botanical painting tutorials that are much more in-depth than our YouTube ones. They are not here on YouTube. You won't find any of the YouTube tutorials over there. They are written just for my patrons and are exclusive to them. We have 3 membership levels, including a mentorship and coaching level where you can have some one-on-one coaching from me. In case that's something that interests you. While we're waiting for this to dry, let's just take a look. Are you an aspiring artist looking to take your skills to the next level? Or perhaps you're looking for fresh inspiration? Then you may want to consider joining our Patreon. Our Patreon tutorials have much more in-depth instructions and are a much slower pace, and depending on the membership level you choose, you can have personalised feedback from me and video calls. Unlike our YouTube tutorials, our Patreon art classes focus on really learning the art of botanical painting, and I will guide you step by step through the technique and skills you will need to learn and improve your botanical art. All of our Patreon tutorials are exclusive to my patrons and you won't find them on YouTube. So why not join up to our Patreon and start creating botanical art you can be truly proud of. You can join Patreon or leave at any time, so do check us out there, and of course it's a way that you can support my channel. Okay, so all the layers are now dry, so we need to start to think about adding some colour to this beautiful, beautiful flower. If you don't have this, you could use something like a buff titanium. I'm taking this colour all over, apart from the outside edge, where we've got that kind of lighter colour, and I'm using my number 2 brush to do this. So I'm going to add a little bit of cowberry. So we've got woodcow wheat and wild berry. The difference between the two is minimal. I would say that wild berry is slightly more burgundy. And I'm just going to drop this in over that colour that I've just put on. And you can see how it's blurring up like this. I'm going to add a little bit of woodcow wheat as well, so you can see the difference. So just let it do its thing up to the pencil line and just let it push it out. So just dropping it in, any of those colours, almost to the outside edge but not quite. And around the outside and just pulling it up. So that's given a nice soft base tone for that. As it's still wet, we can just drop in more colour. And this is just still my number 2 brush. And just drop it in, take it up to the outside edge, but just leave that little gap there. I'm just going to leave that dry. I'm going to take a tiny bit of reed buff and I'm just going to paint the stamen and anther. Actually, I'm going to take a little bit of a yellow colour to put in there as well. So any yellow colour that you have with buff titanium or something like that would work really, really well. Just get that on. Okay, just going to let that dry. So I'm just going to wipe a little bit of this away so that I've got some room. So I'm adding a tiny bit more water here. I'm going to go back to this nice kind of muted bluey green tone. And now that this is dry, I can use this to create a little bit of shape to these lighter coloured petals. The petals are white in certain areas, but because we don't want them to look flat, we can add a little bit of tonal variation by adding a little bit of a grey tone, or in this case a bluey grey tone. So whatever kind of colour you've got, you can just put over that initial wash now. So the same for this one, using that same colour. Where we've got this kind of curve, on the photograph there is a little curve here, but I've taken that out just to simplify it. So I'm putting this colour on that area there, cleaning my brush, and with that damp brush I'm just blending it out so that we've got that soft transition, okay? So anywhere that we have this kind of shady tone, we can put this colour in. So, but I'm using it very, very watery, so just to give a hint of that colour. All this is doing is it's giving the painting a tiny bit of shape. So we don't want it to be too strong a colour grey or bluey grey. So just add this in where you want to add a little bit of shape. I am going to simplify the painting a little bit just to make it a little bit quicker for you to do. And again, on the bottom part, I'm just going to mix a tiny bit more. Just need a smidgen of that colour, very watered down. And I'm going to take it on the bottom side of it as well. So working around this part that we've just painted in, and you can see how gentle that colour is. So you just want to give your painting a little bit of, to make it look less flat. I'm going to put it to the outside edge here. So already you can see that it's looking less flat, much, much nicer. So let's have a look to see. Cherry Blossom. Cherry Blossom is this lovely kind of lilac-y pinky tone, and just take this over some of the areas. This is a really lovely colour because it's slightly opaque, and I'm going to just put it a little bit on here as well. Although it's not in the photograph, I think it'll just unify those colours. I have got a splash of paint on my paper there, so I'm just going to get rid of that by using a magic eraser. Tip there, always have some magic eraser in your kit just in case. And I'm also taking that the cherry blossom colour to the outside edge. I have used this cherry blossom colour quite a lot in my tutorials here. I haven't seen any other colour like it actually, but you could maybe have a similar mix with a very, very light pink colour, something like that. So I am just making a little bit of this up and taking over some of that area there, just like that. So going back to the Ultramarine Rose, so we can start to add a little bit now, a little bit more here and there. So this is now dry, so using Ultramarine Rose, going up to that pencil line that we painted in and just drawing a line coming up here because we've got a gap here. Right up like that, and then using the tip of the brush, working around and just drawing some lines like this. Going to go back to that grey colour and just add there. So you need to have a nice watery mix. We have got this a little bit of this colour here as well, and then just blend that out. So remember, we're just building up these colours gently. A bit more of that pinky tone, and now we can start to go over some of this grey colour that we put in. So where we put that greyish tone, we can now go over with a little bit of pink. Like I said, this isn't strictly to the photograph. I do know that. Working around and just creating a little bit of shape. Notice how fine I can get the veins with this brush. Cleaning the brush and then just using it to blend out. Look how soft that is. It looks really, really lovely. To the bottom part of this, some more of that pink tone. And a little bit more of that just working up. You can add some veins if you want to. A little bit of the pink tone at the bottom here. Still working around that little shape there that we put in earlier on. Picking up a mixture of the Ultramarine Rose with that blossom colour. And again, just going over some of the areas that I put in here, just to enhance a little bit of pink as we work through. I'm going to put this pink tone here, and again, going over this bit. So these are nice muted tones. Taking up that colour, going back to the grey, and like that. So I've done a little bit of detail here and there. And I'm picking up a tiny bit of that burgundy tone and just outlining this section here. You can get a really fine point with this brush. Going back to these two colours, so Wild Berry, I need to maybe clean down my palette, so we'll put Wild Berry here, and using this colour, I'm going to go over this base tone now. We've got that colour in place, we know where we're going, so I'm just going to use it to create some shapes. Taking it as close as you want to take it to that outside edge, because there's a definite edge there, but you can still see some of that negative space underneath where we've got that initial colour. Going back over this with that burgundy tone, you can still see that nice green colour underneath. Picking up the green tone and just adding it midway and just letting them blur together. If you want to add a little bit more burgundy to the base, you can do that. And again, with a clean brush, you can blend these colours together. Over to this one, back to that burgundy colour, and we've lifted out that colour, so now we need to enhance that colour that we've lifted out. So just by going around these negative spaces, we can create this dark burgundy colour. I'm going to go to the Woodcow Wheat, which is the more burgundy of the two, and just paint around. And use that kind of wiggly motion to blur those colours together. Going to add a tiny bit more of that green tone to this, so around the outside of that stem. I'm only going to take this halfway to give it a bit of variation in colour, so apply that colour, clean the brush, blend it out. Clean the brush, pat it dry and blend it out. So we've got that nice transition there, and this one definitely needs a bit more colour, I think. I've decided to go over that again. So same process, pick up that colour, we can now work around this one. If you wanted to add a little bit of veining, you could do that. Using that brush just to do the circular motions, and that will really control your paint application. You can just kind of merge them together. So I'm going to go back to those two mixes and just enhance this one a little bit. Just taking that darker value. so that these kind of merge together. And then what you can do is outline this area here just to make it look nice and sharp. So I'm going to use same brush, this is my number 4 brush, picking up some of that burgundy tone, and now I'm going to use this to outline some of the stamen and anther in the middle. So you can just go around and just create these little wiggly shapes. Adding some clean water to the palette there, and with the blender brush, this is the brush that has that nice curved edge, making sure that it's nice and clean, patting it on my kitchen paper, and then using this brush. You can actually use it wet, so it's picking up some water and just going over the entire petals and merging them together like this. Everything's dry, and by doing this you're unifying everything and getting rid of those funny hard edges that you get sometimes with watercolour. Same on here, really gently because there's more layers on this section, and just by doing that it merges everything together. And if you have gone outside the pencil line, you can use this and just remove anything, any errors like that. And you can even lift out some veins in your leaves, lift it out, pat it dry, and you can even do that when your paint is dry. So clean your brush, pat it dry, and then just use that curved edge to lift out any veins. So remember to stay right until the end, where you can have access to those outlines I mentioned. And now that I've lifted that out, I'm just going to maybe add a bit more of a detail to that outline. If you want to, you can enhance it, but just by going around the outside a bit like this. Only if you want to. It's entirely up to you how much detail you put on this one. So it's meant to be a nice relaxed painting so that you can learn to paint as you paint. That's what we're all about here on the Wonders of Watercolour. Getting everybody painting, getting you to join in with the tutorials, and more importantly having fun as you learn. I'm just going to put a little bit more of that lovely ultramarine rose, and just going to enhance one or two of the lines using my this is my number 2 brush, just to add a little bit of detail and just follow those lines up. Remember, if you are enjoying this video, could I ask you to hit that like button? I'd really appreciate it. And of course, subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. You don't want to miss out on these weekly free tutorials. And if you do get stuck on your colours, please let me know in the comments and I will absolutely help you out. If you'd like to know what colours to use that you have within your own set, put them in the comment box below and you can join in with us. What I'm going to do is just pick a little bit of the Ultramarine Rose, and I'm just taking over a little bit more of that just to unify it slightly. And also, although it's not on this little section here, I'm just going to add a tiny bit. And notice the blending motion that I'm using as I apply the paint too. So coming down, just adding a few more veins. Just a little bit of detail, nothing too fussy. And just add them in. Do as much detail as you want to do. Maybe you've got a bit more time on a day that maybe you feel like doing a little bit more painting. Just use that photo and watch along with us first of all, and then you can use the photograph when you're ready. And we'd love to see the finished paintings too, so do join us over on the Wonders of Watercolour Facebook group. You can post up your finished paintings there. And we are a fantastic group. We are a lovely positive community and we'd love to see you. We'd love to have new members. So I'm going to call this finished. Be sure to stay right until the end so that you can have access to that outline and reference photograph. Remember to hit subscribe and that like button. But in the meantime, let's just take a moment to appreciate the finished painting, and I'll see you next week.